In this video, which is the last video for this section, you're going to learn about the select dropdown. So the dropdown is going to allow us to provide the user with multiple pre-configured options, and they can pick one. Now, the to-do application is actually going to have a checkbox in the final version, but it's not going to use a dropdown. We'll be using the dropdown in the notes application, but we actually won't be using a checkbox. So I'm going to kick off this video by removing that checkbox, which was created for educational purposes. So over here, we have the actual checkbox code. I'm going to delete that and clean up these empty lines. I'll save the file, and I'm also going to remove the event handler we had set up for the checkbox, which no longer exists. So let's go ahead and set up a dropdown for the Notes application. For the Notes app, we're going to use a dropdown to allow the user of the application to pick the order they want to sort things by. So maybe they want to sort alphabetically. Maybe they want to sort by the most recently created one, or maybe they want to sort showing the most recently edited note up top. So we'll give them a few different options, allowing them to easily find the things they want. We're not going to worry about wiring up the sorting just yet. That'll come in a later section. For now, we're just going to get the select dropdown in place and figure out how we can get its value from JavaScript. So right here, to create the dropdown, it all starts with the select tag. The select tag has an opening and closing tag, and right inside, we put all of the options we want to show in the dropdown. In our case, we're going to add 3 options for this example. For every option we want to add to the dropdown, we have to create a new option element inside of the select element. So right here, a new option tag, we have an opening and closing tag for option, and all we put inside of it is the text we want to have show up. So the first option I'll give users to sort by will be sort by last edited. And we can give them a few more options as well. So I'll add another option below the other option. And for this one, I could say sort by recently created. So I can put the newest notes first. And then down below that, we could add another option. And for this one, we'll allow them to sort alphabetically. Great. So we have our 3 options in place, and if we actually save the markup, we can see that over here we get our dropdown. The default value is the first one, sort by last edited, but I can always come in here and click one of the other ones to pick that. Now, if you refresh the page, you're going to notice that the value gets preserved. This is because Live Reload, the server we have set up, Live Server, it's trying to help us out. If you ever want to completely refresh things, you can use a hard reload on your browser. For the Mac, this is mostly Command-Shift-R in almost all browsers. And for Windows, that would be Windows-Shift-R. And for Linux, it would be Command-Shift-R, depending on your keyboard setup. This is going to always bring you back to the raw default page. Here I can see that I'm now coming back to the correct value, which is the first one. So just a little aside if you ever get any weird behavior like that. Now what we're going to do is actually listen for changes in this dropdown. So I'm going to set up an ID so we can target it. I'll call this one filter by. And over inside of JavaScript, we're going to target filter by and get its value when it changes. Over here, document.query selector. We are selecting an element by ID, filter hyphen by, and we're going to add an event listener using add event listener. Now, the event that we're going to be using is the exact same event we use for our checkboxes. So the change event, this is going to fire every single time that dropdown value changes. I'm going to pass in the function it expects, and I'm going to get access to that event argument, which is going to allow me to figure out what value was picked. Now inside of here, we will use console.log to print the value and check our work. The value first lives on e.target. This is where we get access to the select element. Now for select elements, we use the value property, much like we do for our text-based inputs. The only different one was the checkbox. For that, we use checked. So let's go ahead and save this and see what happens. Over here, we have no messages in the console. If I switch this up to recently updated, I see sort by recently updated. If I switch this over to sort alphabetically, I can see we have sort alphabetically showing up. Now, with our select dropdowns, we can see we're getting back the full string value. This isn't always what we want, because the string value might be something really, really long. It might be something that gets translated depending on the user's local language. So we want a way to set up a value that we can use inside of JavaScript, something that's not going to change. Option allows us to do just that. On option, we can go ahead and set value. Value allows us to provide a different value for when this option is picked. So instead of a long sentence, which we really don't want to check inside of our JavaScript, we'll stick with a much simpler one, like by edited. Now we can do the same thing for our other ones, coming up with a simpler way to describe each. For this one, I will use by created. And I'm sticking to camel casing since I'm probably going to use this value in JavaScript quite a bit when I'm running my comparison operators to see which filter has been picked. And for the last one, we'll just set value equal to alphabetical. So this is going to allow us to consistently use these values in our programming while tweaking these if we need to adjust the language or providing translated versions for users in different languages. This is what we're going to set up though for all of our select dropdowns, and I recommend that you do the same. Now, if we go over to the application, we can click around a bit more and we can see this time around, without changing the JavaScript code at all, we're getting the new value, something a bit better for us inside of our JavaScript code. Having to work with that full string would have been really annoying and really cumbersome. And if someone came in to change the language, it could have potentially broken our application. Now, eventually we are going to wire up this dropdown to actually sort the notes, but that's going to require us to have a discussion about dates in JavaScript, and we will get to that, just not yet. So for the moment, we'll leave it in place and we'll just have a dummy event handler that just dumps some value to the console. That's where we're going to stop for this video. And since this is the last video for this section, it's also where we're going to stop for this section. And I want to take a quick moment to reflect just how far we've come. The first several sections of the course were us learning the basic syntax of the language, learning about variables, booleans, strings, numbers, arrays, objects. We learned about the language and we were able to mess around with it by running terminal commands, but we had never built anything we could really give to someone else to do anything meaningful with. In this section, we were able to do just that. We now know how to use JavaScript with HTML so we can actually render things to the browser and respond to user interaction. Not user interaction via the terminal, but user interaction via a real interface. Now, obviously, neither of these apps are done yet. We have part of them complete, but there are still a lot of features left to go. So in the next couple of sections, we're going to continue working on these apps as we learn more and more about creating JavaScript applications. I'm really excited to continue on with the course. Let's go ahead and continue building out these apps in the next one. The section intro is coming up now.